I want to start with a moment that kind of broke my brain. I've always considered myself pretty tech aware, but there was a gap I didn't even realize I had. I was a Mac user for years by choice and a Windows user by mandate for my job, business laptop only, of course. No gaming PC in the house, my kids were too young for that. So anything tied to VR or virtual desktops, I just didn't engage with. My son asked for an Oculus for the holidays once, and I ignorantly dismissed it as a toy, and he soon moved on. Then Apple showed off the Vision Pro at WWDC 2023. As an Apple aficionado, I was drawn in by the idea of a virtual movie theater with a 100-foot screen or a floating monitor for work. It started to click. I visited my local Apple store and demoed the Vision Pro 2 weeks after it was released. And suddenly I'm sitting there with screens floating all around me. Big, sharp, placed anywhere I want. And my brain literally cracked in half. And I remember thinking, wait, you can do this? How long has this been a thing? I couldn't believe I'd missed it. And really, that's what this episode is about. Apple didn't invent virtual screens, not even close. But Apple made me aware of them in a way nothing else ever did. Virtual screens have been around a long time. One of the most important early apps is Virtual Desktop, created by Guy Godin in 2016. It lets you take your entire PC desktop and put it inside a VR headset. Not just for games, but for work too. Browsers, apps, everything. On Steam, it evolved into a full PC VR tool, and on Quest, it became a great wireless streaming solution. Then you have Big Screen. They're more social, watching movies with other people in a virtual theater, and other use cases. Their own headset, although it hasn't really shipped at scale yet. On the AR side, Microsoft HoloLens and Magic Leap were placing screens into the real world instead of virtual ones. And more recently, companies like Xreal have started bringing lightweight glasses into the mix. The idea of infinite screens had been building for years, but I just wasn't paying attention to it. Apple has a history of entering markets that already exist and making them visible to everyone. Smartphones existed before the iPhone. Tablets existed before the iPad. Smartwatches existed before the Apple Watch. What Apple does well is present the experience in a way that clicks. That's what happened to me with Vision Pro. The idea wasn't new, but it finally landed. And I don't think I'm alone in that. Instead of being limited by 1 or 2 screens on a desk, you have as many as you want, wherever you want them. And you can be wherever you want, be it your office, your couch, or looking at Jupiter in the distance from the surface of one of its moons. Once you see this, it's hard to go back to thinking about computing from a single screen on a desk. Now here's where I want to ground the conversation a bit. Vision Pro is not a mainstream product right now. It starts at $3,500. It's heavy on your face. And for long sessions, comfort really does matter. It's an incredible experience, but it's not something that most people are going to use as their daily computer today. It feels more like an early version of something bigger, something coming. More like Apple pointing in a direction and saying, this is where computing is going. And once Apple points in a direction, the rest of the industry tends to move with it. Prices come down, hardware gets lighter and better, software ecosystems begin to fill in. Something that felt experimental starts to feel normal. We've seen that pattern play out before. It's not a perfect comparison, but think about Steve Ballmer laughing at the iPhone, or BlackBerry executives dismissing it when they owned that market in 2007. Or the reaction to AirPods when they first launched, people saying, no one would wear those ridiculous looking things in public. Does that sound familiar? So, did Apple legitimize spatial computing? I think so. Not because they invented it, they made people like me understand it. People who enjoy tech, but weren't deep in VR. People who didn't have a gaming PC. People who had no idea how far this had already come or how accessible it already is compared to where it was even 10 years ago. The shift in awareness matters, and Apple's halo effect matters too. If you're in this space, or even just curious about it, start thinking about your work in terms of space and not screens. This is VR Lens. I'm Craig Storm. Thanks for listening.